What starts as a cold, calculated baby swap for revenge and riches spirals into decades of hidden cruelty, unbreakable brotherhood, shocking abuse, and the most explosive family reckoning imaginable. Vivian thought she stole the perfect life for her son. But fate had the cruelest twist waiting. Watch this full dramatic story of betrayal, twisted maternal love, inheritance drama, and ultimate justice. If you love revenge plots, family secrets, DNA twists, and emotional roller coasters, hit play now. Vivian's hands trembled as she stood between the two bassinets in the quiet nursery. The only sound was the soft breathing of sleeping newborns and the faint hum of the air conditioner. Moonlight cut through the blinds in thin silver lines across the floor. She reached first for the one labeled Clark. Boy. Her fingers brushed the small plastic tag tied to the blanket. With a quick twist, she pulled it off, then did the same to her own baby's tag. She swapped them. Clark's name now hung on her son's bassinet. Her son's name now hung on the rich baby's. Vivian stared down at the two tiny faces. Both chocolate-skinned, both beautiful, both so new they still looked almost the same. No one would notice. Not tonight, not tomorrow, maybe never. She leaned close to her real son, now wearing the Clark name, and whispered, I promise you, you'll live like a king. You will live in a big house and attend fancy schools. You will enjoy everything your poor mother never had. I am doing this for your present and future, my son. Then she looked at the other baby, the one who would grow up thinking he belonged to her. She felt a sharp twist in her chest, but she pushed it down. It's a pity you'll become the son of a maid, she muttered. But life is not fair. She had planned this whole thing meticulously for months. A bribe to a shady technician ensured the CCTV feeds would glitch for exactly 10 minutes, long enough for her to slip into the nursery, swap the identification tags, and cradle the babies in a swift exchange. Now, the switch was finally complete. After months of careful planning and relentless strategizing, the moment of payoff had arrived. She slipped out of the nursery exactly as she had entered, silent as a shadow, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and an unexpected surge of pride. The next morning, sunlight filtered through the curtains of Mrs. Clark's private room as Nurse Amelia wheeled in the bassinet. Here's your beautiful baby boy, Mrs. Clark, she said cheerfully, lifting the bundled infant into Elena's arms. Elena gazed down at the baby, her exhaustion mingling with joy. But something nagged at her, a mother's instinct sharper than any blade. She had glimpsed her son briefly right after delivery, his features soft and familiar. This child, his nose seemed broader, his cry a touch higher. He looks kind of different, she murmured, her voice laced with uncertainty. This is my baby, right? Nurse Amelia chuckled reassuringly. Of course, ma'am. Swelling from birth can change a baby's appearance. Moreover, we always double-check the tags. It's normal for new mums to feel this way. He's yours. Don't worry. Elena's husband, Mr. Jonathan Clark, a tall man with a kind face and a booming business empire in real estate, squeezed her hand. Darling, you're probably just tired. Look how perfect our son is, our little Alexander. Elena nodded slowly, pushing the doubt aside. But it lingered, a shadow in her heart. 3 days later, the Clarks were discharged, their new family bundled into a sleek black SUV. Their maid, Vivian, was also released with her son in her arms. Back at their spacious 3-bedroom apartment in the upscale part of the city, life resumed with a newborn twist. Jonathan poured all his love and attention on Alexander Clark, showering him with imported toys and a custom nursery. Elena, ever the gracious employer, ensured Vivian had time to rest and bond with her own baby, whom Vivian had named Daniel. Make sure you take some weeks off to rest too, Vivian. Okay? Elena said one afternoon, peeking into the maid's modest room at the back of the apartment. And take these bags. I bought some clothes and toys for Daniel. She handed over 3 big bags to her live-in maid. As Elena cared for Alexander, buying him the best formula, toys and clothes, she never failed to also extend kindness to Daniel. Vivian forced a grateful nod. Thank you, madam. God bless you. Envy smoldered in Vivian's heart. She had long resented the wealthy Clark family, envied Elena for securing a good husband and a life of comfort. But now, the envy no longer weighed so heavily on her because her scheme was already in motion. Daniel, the true Clark heir, lay in her care, while Alexander, her real child, was embraced by the Clarks as theirs, destined for fortune that would soon be hers too. 5 months flew by in a blur of sleepless nights and first milestones. Alexander thrived in the Clarks' world, his laughter filling the apartment as Elena sang lullabies and Jonathan bounced him on his knee. "Who's Daddy's big boy?" Jonathan cooed, eliciting giggles. In Vivian's small room at the back of the apartment, everything felt different. She fed Daniel without warmth, her movements quick and mechanical, as if it were just another chore. All the bitterness she carried toward the Clarks poured out in sharp, whispered words aimed straight at the baby. "Open your mouth quick and eat this food," she snapped one evening, holding the spoon roughly against his lips. "I don't have time for your nonsense tonight. Open up fast, or I'll pour it all in the bin." Whenever he fussed or turned his head away, Vivian would reach out and pinch his soft, chubby legs or cheeks hard enough to make him whimper. One evening, Elena sat in the living room with her laptop open, catching up on emails while the apartment was quiet except for the soft hum of the air conditioner. From the back hallway came a faint, muffled sound, sobs, small and choked, drifting through the thin walls of Vivian's room. Elena paused, her fingers hovering over the keys. She listened a moment longer, then closed the laptop and walked down the short corridor. She knocked gently on Vivian's door. "Vivian? Is everything okay in there?" The door opened just a few inches. Vivian stood in the gap, her face quickly arranged into a tight smile. "Nothing's wrong, madam," she said, voice steady but a little too bright. "It must be the TV." The volume was too high. Elena studied her for a second. The excuse felt thin, and that familiar unease, the same quiet doubt she had felt in the hospital, stirred again in her chest. Still, she kept her tone warm and open. "Okay," she said softly, "but if you need anything, just let me know." Vivian nodded quickly. "Thank you, Ma." Elena gave her a small, concerned smile before stepping back. As the door clicked shut, she lingered in the hallway a moment longer, listening to the sudden silence on the other side. A year slipped by, and both boys turned 1 on the very same day. Alexander's birthday filled the apartment with celebration from morning till night. Balloons in every color floated against the ceiling. A tall custom cake shaped like a friendly lion sat proudly on the dining table, and a steady stream of gifts arrived: expensive stuffed animals, designer baby clothes, wooden blocks, and even a tiny silver spoon from Jonathan's business partners. Music played. Elena clapped along as she sang Happy Birthday. Jonathan captured every second on video, and Alexander squealed with delight at the candle flame, his chubby hands waving in excitement while family and friends cooed over him. From a distance, Vivian watched with quiet satisfaction as her son reveled in the celebration. Then she lowered her gaze to Daniel, cradled in her arms. It was his birthday too, though his was marked not by grandeur, but by silence in the small back room, a world away from the laughter and music outside. Elena, however, made a point to stop by. She knocked softly and stepped inside, carrying a small wrapped box. "I couldn't let the day go by without getting something for Daniel too," she said warmly. Inside was a bright red toy truck with chunky wheels that rolled smoothly across the floor. Daniel's eyes widened. He grabbed it immediately and banged it happily against the bed frame, making little engine noises. Vivian gave a short nod. "Thank you, Ma. I really appreciate." Elena smiled, watched Daniel play for a minute, then left the room quietly, leaving the door cracked open so the sounds of Alexander's ongoing party drifted down the hallway. Laughter, more singing, the pop of another balloon. Then, trouble knocked. It was Rico, the technician Vivian had bribed to disrupt the CCTV. He showed up at the back door one rainy evening, his grin sleazy. "Vivian, dear, I just wanted to remind you of our little deal. You remember the hospital footage glitch, right? Well, I need more cash. 500,000. Or I sing to the Clarks." Vivian's blood ran cold. "But I already paid you for the job." "Well, I said I need more cash," he said. "Where do you expect me to find that kind of money?" Vivian was worried and frustrated. "I don't care where you find it. Just make sure you do," Rico snarled, "or everyone will know what you did." Desperate, Vivian waited until the Clarks stepped out to escort their guests. She slipped into their bedroom, rifling through drawers until she found Elena's jewelry box. She pocketed a gold necklace and some cash enough to pay Rico off. The next day, Elena noticed the missing items. Jonathan, I can't find my necklace, and the emergency cash drawer is empty too. Jonathan, her husband, frowned. Are you sure you searched well? He asked. Turning to Vivian, he inquired further. What about you? Did you see anything? Vivian shook her head, eyes wide. No, sir. I didn't see anything. But Elena's gaze hardened. It has to be you, Vivian. We're the only ones here. There are no ghosts in this house. Madam, I swear. Elena cut her off. We can't be living with a thief. Aside from this incident, I have noticed your behavior has also changed. You sometimes even give me attitude. I think it's best if you just pack your things and leave tomorrow morning. That night, rage consumed Vivian like a fever she couldn't shake. In the dim glow of the bedside lamp, 1-year-old Daniel toddled across the rug, babbling cheerfully to himself, tiny hands reaching toward a forgotten toy. His innocent sounds grated against her nerves like sandpaper. Shut up, she hissed, her voice breaking. Your witch of a mother thinks she can talk to people anyhow because she's rich. That rich witch. I'll show her. I'll show her exactly what happens when you cross me. The words barely left her lips before the anger swallowed her whole. She lunged forward, snatched the toddler up by one chubby arm, and brought her open palm down hard across his small buttocks, once, twice, 3 sharp stinging slaps. Daniel's happy babble shattered into a piercing wail. Vivian wasn't done yet. She gripped his tiny shoulders and shook him violently, back and forth in blind fury, his head whipping helplessly until his wails turned to weak, broken whimpers. She also pinched and twisted the soft skin on his thighs and upper arms, leaving deep purple bruises shaped like her fingertips. You think you're special? She'd snarl at the helpless toddler. You're nothing. As she rose her hand to spank Daniel some more, her door flew open, and in came Jonathan and Elena, panting heavily. What's going on here? Jonathan bellowed, scooping up the crying child. Elena glared at Vivian. How could you beat a little boy that hard? He is my child, madam, and I will discipline him however I want. Give him back to me. Vivian spat with fury. You can't take him. Jonathan's face darkened. No, we're not leaving an innocent kid with someone who beats him like that. He stays with us, and we'll raise him as though he's ours. You can't take my own child away from me, sir. Vivian barked. She was desperate to drag Daniel away, the true heir to the Clark's wealth and name. The last thing she wanted was for him to taste the comfort and security that were rightfully his. Elena stepped forward. If you don't give him to us, then we will call child service and tell them everything you've been doing to your helpless son. The CCTV is there to show proof. You'd even go to jail for the abuse you've caused this boy. Terrified of losing everything, including her freedom, Vivian was forced to relent. She made up her mind to leave without the boy. Sure, he would grow up with his real parents, but he would never get to enjoy it as much as my son, Alexander. Years blurred into a tapestry of growth and change. The Clarks, with their business booming, moved to a sprawling mansion on the outskirts of the city. Alexander and Daniel grew up side by side. They were inseparable like true brothers, their childhoods unfolding in the same sprawling home, yet along different paths. Alexander, raised as the rightful heir to the Clark fortune, enjoyed every privilege wealth could buy. Enrollment in the most elite private academies, summer programs in Europe, private tutors, exotic family vacations, and a wardrobe of designer clothes. Doors opened effortlessly for him, and the world seemed tailored to his ambitions. Daniel, officially presented as the adopted son of the household maid, lived a solid, comfortable life. His life was far from deprived, but it was deliberately kept more modest, even though he attended same school as Alexander. Daniel helped with light chores around the house to instill responsibility and humility, wore simple new clothes, and rarely ventured beyond family outings. Still, he was well-fed, warmly clothed, given books and toys, medical care when needed, and the steady affection of the household staff who quietly doted on him. His days held warmth, playtime, and laughter, even if they lacked the extravagance Alexander took for granted. Despite the disparity in their opportunities, the boys formed an unbreakable bond. They shared secrets under the covers during sleepovers in Alexander's grand room, raced bikes through the garden paths, built forts together from couch cushions, and defended each other fiercely against schoolyard taunts. Daniel's grounded nature tempered Alexander's occasional entitlement, while Alexander's confidence lifted Daniel's quiet spirit. In the quiet moments, laughing over shared jokes, trading comic books, or simply sitting in companionable silence, they were equals, brothers in every way that mattered. "Race you to the tree!" Alexander shouted one summer day, his teenage frame sprinting across the lawn. Daniel, equally handsome with his chocolate skin and bright eyes, laughed and caught up. "You're on, bro," Daniel panted, tagging the trunk first. "The loser buys ice cream for the winner." "Deal?" Alexander grinned. "Deal. But bro, you're fast. Don't go all out on me, okay?" Jonathan watched from the porch, proud. "Those boys are inseparable." Elena nodded, her heart full. One crisp afternoon when the boys were 15, Vivian lingered in the shadows near the wrought iron gates of their elite private school. As the gates of St. Jude's Academy swung open, releasing a flood of students in crisp blazers, Alexander walked at the center of a group, laughing, his expensive leather bag slung over one shoulder. Daniel followed a few steps behind, carrying both his own heavy textbooks and Alexander's sports bag. Vivian stood by a concrete pillar, her heart hammering. She wore a faded headscarf and large sunglasses, looking every bit the disgraced maid she had become. In her hands was a small, grease-stained paper bag containing homemade meat pies, Alexander's favorite when he was a toddler. As Alexander approached the curb where the clerk's black SUV was idling, Vivian stepped forward. "Alexander," she whispered, her voice cracking. Alexander stopped, his brow furrowing in disgust as he looked at her worn-out clothes. His friends paused, whispering, "Who is this, Alex? Your grandmother's cleaner?" Vivian reached out, trying to touch his arm. I just wanted to bring you this. Happy birthday. Get away from me," Alexander snapped, recoiling as if her touch were toxic. He didn't recognize her as the woman from his infancy. He only saw a beggar embarrassing him in front of the elite. "I don't know you. Move before I call the school security." The paper bag fell to the pavement, the meat pies spilling onto the dusty ground. Vivian's eyes filled with tears. Her own son, the boy she had risked everything to put in that blazer, looked at her like she was trash. "Wait, Alex, hold on." Daniel stepped in, dropping the sports bag. He looked at the trembling woman and felt a strange, painful tug in his chest, a connection he couldn't explain. He didn't know this was the woman who had bruised his skin and broken his spirit years ago when he was just a child. He only saw a woman in pain. Daniel knelt and began picking up the ruined food. "I'm sorry, ma'am. He's in a hurry." He looked up at her, his eyes kind. "Are you okay? Do you need a ride somewhere?" Vivian looked down at Daniel, the maid's son. She felt a surge of irrational anger. How dare he be the one to show her pity? "Don't touch me," she hissed at Daniel, snatching her hand away. "I don't need anything from you." She turned and fled into the crowd, leaving Daniel standing there confused, holding a dirt-covered meat pie, while Alexander hopped into the back of the SUV. "Leave that junk, Daniel," Alexander shouted from the window. "Get in the car, you're making us look poor." Daniel looked at the retreating figure of Vivian one last time, then slowly climbed into the car, the shadow in his heart growing darker, like they had met in a life before. As the years turned into decades, the Clark mansion became a house of two opposites. Alexander, the tyrant heir. By age 25, Alexander didn't just walk through the house, he owned the heir in it. He was the definition of money can't buy class. He was notorious in the city's high-end clubs for racking up bills and leaving Daniel to handle the fallout. There was a specific evening that defined his cruelty. Alexander had come home drunk, crashing his sports car into the garden gates. When the elderly security guard, who had worked for the Clarks for 30 years, tried to help him out of the car, Alexander shoved him to the ground. "Don't touch me with those calloused hands." Alexander roared. "You're a servant. I am the Clark legacy. I could buy and sell your entire family before sunrise." Jonathan and Elena watched from the balcony, their hearts breaking. They had given him everything: private jets, the best tutors, unconditional love, yet he was cold, volatile, and arrogant. They often wondered, how could two kind people produce a son with a heart of stone? Meanwhile, Daniel, the shadow son Daniel, grew up in the same house, but in a completely different world. Though he was adopted, he never let himself forget his place. He was the first one up, checking the household accounts, and the last one to sleep, ensuring the doors were locked. The Clarks had sat him down years ago and told him the truth. "Daniel," Elena had said, her voice trembling, "your biological mother was our maid, Vivian. She wasn't well. She was cruel to you. We couldn't let you stay with her." That truth became Daniel's prison. He walked with a permanent weight on his shoulders. Every time Alexander called him a maid's brat or reminded him he was living on charity, Daniel believed it. He felt he had to work 10 times harder than Alexander just to earn his seat at the dinner table. He became Jonathan's right hand in the business, not because he wanted power, but because he wanted to prove he was worth the rescue. One night, after Alexander had insulted a maid to the point of tears, Daniel confronted him in the grand hallway. "You can't treat people like that, Alex," Daniel said, his voice steady but firm. "They are human beings." Alexander let out a sharp, mocking laugh. He stepped close to Daniel, flicking the lapel of Daniel's modest suit. "Look at you. The perfect son. You're so desperate for mom and dad to love you, aren't you? But let's be real, Dan. You're a stray dog they picked up from the porch. You've got the blood of a common thief pumping through your heart. You can wear the suits, you can do the work, but at the end of the day, I'm the Clark. And you? You're just the help they forgot to fire." Daniel's fist clenched at his side, the old scars on his arms, the ones Vivian gave him, seeming to itch with a ghostly pain. "I may not have the name, Alex, but I have the respect. Something you'll never understand. As the years bled into decades, the Clark mansion became a house of haunting echoes and impossible coincidences. It wasn't just that the boys grew into different men, it was as if nature itself was trying to scream a secret that the family wasn't ready to hear. Elena was the first to feel the chill of the truth. It happened on a quiet Tuesday afternoon while she was cleaning out a cedar chest of family heirlooms. She pulled out a silver-framed portrait of her own father, the great patriarch of the Clark Empire, taken when he was 25 years old. At that exact moment, Daniel walked into the room to refresh her tea. Eleanor looked from the faded photograph to the young man standing before her, and the breath left her lungs. It wasn't just a resemblance, it was a resurrection. Daniel had the same distinctive arch in his eyebrows, the same rare, deep-set mahogany eyes, and a way of tilting his head when he listened that was an exact mirror of the man in the portrait. She looked over at Alexander, who was lounging on the sofa, barking orders at a maid over the phone. Alexander shared none of those traits. His face was round, his features blunt, and his spirit was devoid of the quiet, commanding dignity that had defined the Clark men for generations. Eleanor felt a cold sweat prickle her skin, a thought so terrifying she pushed it deep into the back of her mind. How can the maid's son look more like my father than my own child does? But Jonathan, a man of cold logic and hard numbers, found his seeds of doubt in the science. It started with a routine family medical insurance checkup. The family doctor, a friend of 30 years, sat Jonathan down with a look of profound confusion. "Jonathan," the doctor whispered, "I was reviewing the blood work. You and Elena are both type O negative. It's one of the rarest blood types on Earth." He paused, sliding a folder across the desk. "Daniel is also O negative, but Alexander is B positive. Biologically, Jonathan, it is almost impossible for two O-negative parents to produce a B-positive child." Jonathan laughed it off in the office, calling it a medical fluke, but that night the laughter died. He sat in his darkened study until 4 a.m., surrounded by biology textbooks. The word impossible echoed in the room like a heartbeat. He began to watch the boys with the eyes of a hawk. He noticed the micro-traits, the things you can't teach. Jonathan had a subconscious habit of drumming his fingers in a specific 3-beat pattern on his knee whenever he was stressed. He watched as Alexander bit his nails and paced like a caged animal. Then he looked at Daniel. There, in the corner of the room, Daniel sat quietly, taking notes, his hand resting on his thigh, his fingers drumming that exact, rhythmic 3-beat pattern. It was a ghost of a gesture, a signature written in the blood. The doubt turned into a looming dread that filled the hallways of the mansion. Every time Elena saw the jagged scar on Daniel's arm, the one Vivian had given him with a hot spoon, she felt a protective rage so primal it nearly brought her to her knees. She found herself drawn to the maid's son, feeling a maternal pull toward Daniel that she never felt for the cold, arrogant Alexander. The stage was being set for a catastrophe. Jonathan began a secret investigation, making hushed phone calls to the hospital archives and demanding nursery logs from 32 years ago. He was a man chasing a shadow, unaware that the shadow was about to swallow him whole. He started to realize that the prince he had raised was a stranger, and the servant he had pitied was his own flesh and blood. The truth was no longer a secret, it was a ticking time bomb, and the timer was about to hit zero. The heavy oak door to Jonathan's private study was locked from the inside. Outside, the mansion was quiet, but inside Jonathan's chest, a storm was raging. On his mahogany desk sat a courier envelope, sealed with the wax stamp of a private genetic laboratory. Jonathan's hands trembled as he slid a silver letter opener through the paper. He pulled out the document, his eyes skipping past the legal jargon straight to the bottom of the page. Subject A. Daniel. 99.99%. Biological match. Subject B. Alexander. 0%. Biological match. The words hit him like a physical blow to the solar plexus. The air left his lungs and the room began to spin. 32 years of memories, every hug he'd given Alexander, every time he'd disciplined Daniel for knowing his place, flashed before his eyes like a cruel joke. He felt a sharp, stabbing heat in his chest. His knees buckled, and he crashed into the side of his desk, sliding down onto the cold hardwood floor. He was gasping, his vision tunneling into blackness. He was having a heart attack, the weight of the lie finally crushing his heart. He lay there for a moment, staring at the underside of his desk. He could hear Alexander's muffled laughter coming from the hallway, the sound of the boy he had raised as a prince, mocking a maid. Something shifted in Jonathan. The pain didn't vanish, but a cold, hard rage took its place. He gripped the edge of the heavy desk, his knuckles turning white. His breath came in ragged, shallow bursts, but he forced his muscles to move. "Not yet," he wheezed, his teeth gritted. "I am not dying until I set this right." With a guttural groan of pure willpower, Jonathan hauled himself up. He dragged his body back into his leather chair, sweat pouring down his face. He didn't call for the doctor. He didn't call for Elena. He reached for his phone and dialed a number he had saved under a fake name. "It's me," Jonathan said, his voice a rasping growl. "The results are in. I need a tactical police unit on standby for Friday night. And I need a liquidator to freeze every account associated with Alexander Clark." He hung up and looked at the DNA report. He folded it slowly, tucked it into his breast pocket, and straightened his tie. He stood up, steadying himself against the desk one last time. He looked in the mirror, wiped the sweat from his brow, and adjusted his expression into a mask of calm, frail exhaustion. The lion was wounded, but he was more dangerous than he had ever been. The trap was set. Vivian, hearing the rumors that the maid's son was about to be officially cast aside while Alexander was crowned king, went for broke. She borrowed a massive sum of money from dangerous lenders, desperate to shed her poor maid skin. When the doors to the grand ballroom swung open, she made an entrance that silenced the room. She was draped in a shimmering, over-the-top gown, her neck heavy with rented jewels. She walked with a smug, regal air, looking at the high society guests as if she was already their equal. Daniel stood by the buffet, his heart sinking. He recognized the woman instantly. The whispers in the crowd were like needles. "Isn't that the thief they fired years ago? What is she doing here?" Alexander, already celebrating with a glass of champagne, leaned over to Daniel and sneered loud enough for the nearby guests to hear. "Look at that, Dan. Your pathetic mother showed up just in time to watch me take everything. I guess even a dog wants to see its master get crowned. Go tell her to stay in the shadows before she embarrasses me further." Daniel looked at Vivian, then at Alexander, the pain of his truth burning in his chest. He felt like an intruder at his own father's party. Then Jonathan Clark stood up. The room went dead silent. He didn't use the wheelchair. He walked to the podium with a strength that terrified Alexander. "I have spent 32 years building an empire," Jonathan began, his voice booming. "And for 32 years, I believed I was building it for my blood. But I recently discovered that blood is a tricky thing. It can be hidden, it can be swapped, but it can never be silenced." Jonathan reached into his jacket and pulled out a stack of papers. I am here tonight to name my true and only heir, the boy who carries my DNA, my values, and my name. The heir to the Clark fortune is Daniel. The silence that followed was deafening. It was as if the oxygen had been sucked out of the room. Alexander's glass shattered on the marble floor. Elena gasped, clutching the table, her eyes wide with shock. She rushed to the stage, her voice trembling. "Jonathan, what are you saying? Have you lost your mind? Alexander is our son." Jonathan didn't say a word. He simply handed her the DNA report and the hospital logs. As Elena's eyes scanned the documents, her hand went to her mouth. A broken, strangled sob escaped her throat. She looked at Daniel, really looked at him, and the veil lifted. She ran off the stage, throwing her arms around a stunned Daniel, weeping into his shoulder. "My son, my real son, forgive me." "No!" Vivian's voice shrieked across the ballroom. She charged toward the stage, her rented jewelry rattling. "That's a lie! I swapped them. Alexander is the rich one. I made him the heir. You can't do this." In her greed and fury, she had confessed. Jonathan signaled the back of the room. "The police have been waiting for that confession, Vivian." The heavy oak doors burst open and 6 officers marched in. They didn't go for Daniel, they moved straight for Vivian. "Miss Vivian, you are under arrest for child abduction, fraud, and decades of documented child abuse," the lead officer announced, snapping the handcuffs over her silk-covered wrists. Vivian struggled, screaming like a wounded animal, her eyes darting to Alexander. "Alex, do something! I did it for you. I'm your mother. Tell them to let me go." Alexander backed away, his face pale, his world crumbling. He looked at the woman in handcuffs, the woman he had just mocked, and the realization hit him like a freight train. This low life, this servant, was the woman who gave him life. He wasn't a prince, he was the son of a criminal. He looked at Daniel, the man he had treated like a dog, and saw the true king. But then, the most unexpected thing happened. Jonathan didn't cast Alexander out with a curse. Instead, his voice softened, filled with a raw, agonizing grief. "Alexander, look at me," Jonathan whispered, his eyes streaming with tears. "I am so sorry, son. We were all deceived. You were used as a weapon by a woman who didn't care who she hurt. We are all broken tonight." Jonathan turned to Daniel and did something no one expected. He fell to his knees on that stage. "Daniel, my true son, can you ever forgive me? I let you work like a servant in your own father's house. I am begging you, please, forgive this old man for being so blind." Alexander stood in the center of the room, torn in two. He watched his biological mother being dragged away, screaming his name, and then he looked at Daniel, the man he had tormented, the man who was now his only hope. He fell at Daniel's feet, sobbing, begging for a mercy he knew he didn't deserve. Daniel stood there, the weight of the empire on his shoulders. He looked at the father on his knees and the brother who had broken his spirit. He was torn. Peace could return to the house if he sent Alexander away. But could he turn his back on the only brother he had ever known? The truth has finally come to light, but the family is in pieces. A mother is in chains, a father is begging for forgiveness, and a son is facing the hardest choice of his life. Now, we want to hear from our global family. Whether you are watching from the busy streets of Lagos, the skyscrapers of the US, the suburbs of the UK, or the vibrant heart of Ghana, tell us in the comments what you would do. If you were Daniel, standing in that room, could you accept Alexander's apology after everything he put you and the staff through? Or is the blood of the woman who stole your life too much to forgive? Drop your country and your honest thoughts below. If this story moved you, smash that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss our next emotional journey. Thank you for watching until the very end.